I never forgot you, human, she returned when I least expected. The forest didn't care that I was having an existential crisis. Trees stood still in judgment, squirrels whispered secrets behind my back, and somewhere far off, a woodpecker was engaged in a personal vendetta against a tree. I was 18, hiking alone through Oregon's Cascade Range, full of poor decisions and dried granola bars, pretending I wasn't scared of the dark. The kind of dumb bravery only a teenager with no mortgage and too many action movies can muster. My backpack was oversized, underpacked, and smelled vaguely like regret and bug spray. I had no signal, no real destination, and absolutely no idea what I was doing, but damn it, I was finding myself, or at least a cool spot for lunch. That's when I heard it, a sound like someone throwing a piano into a blender and then hurling that blender into the sun. It tore through the forest like a banshee with engine trouble. I ducked instinctively as though that would help against whatever that was. Birds exploded out of the treetops in a screeching panic. Then something slammed into the earth with the kind of impact you feel in your kidneys. The ground buckled beneath me, tossing me sideways into a bush that smelled like a Christmas tree's last breath. I scrambled up, heart hammering. Smoke curled into the sky ahead, dark and wrong, like it was made of shadows instead of fire. Logic said, turn back. Curiosity said, what if it's a meteor and you can get on the news? Stupidity said, go faster. I followed stupidity. What I found wasn't a meteor. It was a crater, smoking, glowing faintly around the edges like someone had cracked the earth open just to peek inside, and in the middle of it, tangled in scorched branches and hissing metal, was her. She was unconscious, half covered in what looked like melted armor, obsidian black and cracked like old lava rock. Her limbs were too long, her form too precise, elegant in a way nature didn't usually do on Earth, and her ears, long, graceful, curved slightly at the tips, twitched once as I stepped closer. Naturally, my first thought was, oh crap, I found a weird elf cosplayer who got hit by space debris. My second thought was, but damn, she's beautiful. Her skin shimmered faintly, dark and slick like oil in moonlight. There were cuts along her ribs glowing faint blue, and her breathing was shallow, ragged. She wore a gauntlet that blinked frantically with symbols I couldn't read, but that definitely looked like they were saying, system failure, please panic. I should have run, called someone, taken a blurry photo, and made a TikTok. Instead, I dropped to my knees beside her, pulled my emergency kit from my bag, and started talking to her like she could hear me. Hey, alien lady, don't die, please, don't die. I have like exactly one bandage, a stick of gum, and a vague understanding of CPR from health class. None of those are going to help if you bleed out glowing goo. She groaned faintly, her eyes fluttered open, and I swear for a moment the world went quiet. They were silver, not like metal or jewelry, but like liquid mercury suspended in glass, twin moons staring right through me. She said something in a language that rattled in my skull like dice, then she passed out again. I dragged her to a nearby cave I'd spotted earlier. It took 2 hours, 3 sprained muscles, and more grunting than I'd like to admit. The entire time I kept expecting her to wake up and break me in half, but she didn't. She just breathed shallow and stubborn. Inside the cave, I lit a fire, thank you High School Wilderness Club, and set her armor beside her. It hissed as it cooled, like it was angry. I tried not to take it personally. I patched her up as best I could with gauze and whispered apologies. Every now and then she muttered in her language, soft, almost musical. I didn't understand, but I answered anyway. When she finally opened her eyes again, it was morning. I was asleep, half sitting, covered in ash and dirt. She sat up with inhuman grace, eyes scanning the cave, then me. Her hand went to her chest where the armor used to be, and she froze. I held up both hands. Hey, no sudden movements, I'm not a threat unless you count aggressive hospitality. She tilted her head, her ears twitched. I found you in a crater, I said. You were not in great shape, I dragged you here, I think I might have dislocated a lung. Do aliens even have lungs? Anyway, you're welcome, please don't vaporize me. Her eyes dropped to the strange pendant in her lap. A metallic shape I hadn't seen before resting among the folds of her armor like a seed. She touched it gently, then without a word she rose, towering, silent, graceful. She approached me slowly, and I tensed, waiting for the laser eyes or maybe a swift decapitation. Instead, she knelt, looked into my face like she was memorizing it, then said something that sounded like it might have meant thank you or prepare for disintegration. Hard to say. Then just as quickly, she turned, walked out of the cave, and disappeared into the morning mist. She was gone. The only thing she left behind was the pendant, warm to the touch, softly humming, and a teenage boy sitting alone in a cave wondering if he just hallucinated the most intense first date in galactic history. 10 years later, I was eating soggy fries in my apartment while watching a low-budget alien documentary that made real aliens seem less believable. The narrator kept saying things like advanced civilizations might already walk among us while showing footage of crop circles and cows looking suspicious. I snorted into my root beer. If General Ears from the Moon was walking among us, she was doing a damn good job of ghosting me. The pendant she left behind sat on my windowsill, humming softly every so often like it had a stomach full of bees. It never did anything interesting, just pulsed faintly in the dark like it missed her too. Sometimes I'd talk to it just in case. Still no postcard, huh? I'd mutter. Typical long-distance relationship. Then I'd go back to pretending my life hadn't peaked at age 18 when I dragged a 7FT alien warrior into a cave and failed to get her number. The pendant pulsed again that night. I thought it was just being moody until the sky broke. It started with a pressure drop like the universe took a deep breath and forgot to exhale. Then came the sound, impossibly deep like tectonic plates grinding together in anger. My window shook, my soda vibrated off the counter and fizzed its last breath onto the floor, and then the clouds split open in a slow, yawning wound across the heavens. Light spilled through, red, violet streaks of pulsing green. Not lightning, not northern lights. This was something else entirely. A rift, a tear, the kind of thing you see in sci-fi movies right before someone says it's too quiet and immediately gets eaten by an interdimensional slug. I ran outside, barefoot and underdressed because logic had already abandoned me. The sky churned. People gathered in their pajamas, phones held high, mouths open like a pack of synchronized goldfish, and then it happened. A shape dropped from the rift, no, not dropped, descended. Controlled, purposeful, like a predator. The craft was sleek and obsidian, humming in and out of visible light. It shimmered, folded in on itself, then unfolded like some cosmic origami trick. Trees bent away from it, street lights flickered and died, my neighbor's chihuahua launched into a barking fit so intense I briefly considered giving it to the rift as a peace offering. The ship landed, if you can call it landing, right on the high school football field behind my apartment complex. Real subtle, just casually wrecking half the bleachers and a vending machine. I stood frozen, half hidden behind a hibiscus bush, watching in horror and mild admiration, and then she stepped out. I knew it was her before she even touched the ground. The ears were a dead giveaway, longer now, adorned with tiny glowing nodes and metallic rings. Her armor had evolved, plated with luminous circuits, sharp edges, and something that looked suspiciously like space chain mail. She moved like a blade unsheathing itself, graceful, dangerous, quiet. The last time I saw her, she was bleeding and barely conscious. Now she walked like she owned gravity. She scanned the area once, twice, and then her gaze locked onto me like a missile tracking its favorite target. I was barefoot. I was wearing a faded I Believe in Pizza t-shirt. I looked without exaggeration like the human version of a microwave burrito, and still she looked at me like I was the center of a constellation. I raised a hand awkwardly. Hey, a long time no see. She took 2 steps forward, boots crunching broken asphalt, then paused. The silence between us stretched, dense, electric. I never forgot you, human, she said. Her voice was deeper than I remembered, more layered, like there were multiple versions of her speaking at once, slightly out of sync. I blinked at her, mouth flapping open. Cool, 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 cool. Is this like a social call, or did you just come back to critique my fashion sense? Before she could answer, the ground behind her cracked open like a bad idea being realized. A shriek echoed from above, and something mechanical burst from the clouds, sleek, insectoid, bristling with weapons and what I swear looked like glowing mandibles. It screeched down toward her, and without blinking she turned, drew a blade from her back, and threw it. The blade made a sound like a thunderclap wrapped in a violin string. It carved through the air and through the drone because that's what it had to be, right? Which exploded in a puff of sizzling green dust. The smell was like ozone and burnt marshmallows. Vera, because that was her name, wasn't it? Turned back to me, completely unfazed. I need you, she said. Okay, I replied, because I am weak and still very much in awe of tall women with weapons. Then she added, the galaxy is burning. Cool, cool, I said, nodding rapidly. That happens sometimes, I read the news. And you're coming with me. Oh no, I can't even go 30 minutes without needing a bathroom break, and you want me to go spaceward. She stepped closer and I smelled something weirdly nostalgic like ozone, hot metal, and the faint scent of moss. You gave me your strength when I had none, you saved me, now I save you. That sounded nice, dramatic, powerful. Problem was, I hadn't asked for saving. I'd spent a decade convincing myself it never happened, and now here she was, descending from a crack in the universe to make me part of her cosmic revenge tour. I looked at the ruined football field, the stunned civilians, the bits of space drone twitching on the ground. Then I looked at her, scarred, luminous, beautiful. Do I get to pack a bag at least? She gave the smallest smirk. 10 minutes. Can I bring snacks? 10 minutes. I sprinted for my apartment because clearly my life had decided normal was overrated. I packed in 7 minutes, which I feel deserves an award or at least a commemorative sticker. Of course, in my panic, I wasn't exactly thinking clearly. I grabbed 3 pairs of socks, a toothbrush, my laptop, because who doesn't need free Wi-Fi in space, 2 boxes of granola bars, and for reasons I'll never fully understand, a rubber duck. I stuffed everything into a beat-up duffel bag and sprinted back to the field where an alien general had landed her spaceship like it was a casual Uber pickup. Vera stood by the ship, arms crossed, armor glowing faintly at the seams. She was flanked by 2 more Zelari, taller than her somehow, with armor that shimmered like oil on water and eyes that glowed a piercing blue. They both looked at me the way someone might look at a bag of groceries they hadn't ordered. "This is the human," one of them said, voice crackling through some kind of translator device in their collar. Vera nodded. "Is he structurally stable?" the other asked, squinting at me. "He appears soft." I puffed up. "I'll have you know I once carried an entire couch up 3 flights of stairs. Admittedly, it was a love seat and I did cry afterward, but that's beside the point." Neither of them laughed. Vera did, just a little. It was like hearing thunder smile. "Come," she said and gestured for me to follow. Her ship opened with a deep resonant shudder, folding in on itself like a living thing. The interior was sleek and dark, lit with soft pulses of teal and violet. Panels adjusted around our presence, reshaping the floor as we walked. I stumbled only 3 times, which again I feel deserves recognition. We passed what looked like a control center or maybe an alien gaming rig, and entered a chamber with chairs that definitely weren't made for human anatomy. One of them sprouted a backrest as I approached, which was thoughtful and also mildly unsettling. "Buckle up," Vera said, settling into a throne-like seat that molded to her with an audible sigh. I looked for a buckle, found none. Not seeing any FAA-approved seatbelts here. The ship rumbled. "Just sit down and hold on to your internal organs." I did as instructed, gripping the armrest like I was about to be launched from a very expensive toaster. There was no countdown, no dramatic rumble, just a shift like the air flipped inside out, and suddenly the sky bent sideways and Earth fell away like a forgotten backdrop. The stars stretched into lines, then curves, then something I can only describe as a suggestion of colors that don't exist yet. Space travel, it turns out, is nothing like the movies. There's no rumble, no scream of engines, just a strange silence that presses against your ears and a sense of wrongness in your bones, like your body knows it isn't supposed to move this fast. Vera glanced at me, still alive. I gave a thumbs up. "Internal organs successfully retained. I give this ride 4 stars, lost 1 for lack of snacks." She smiled and something warm flickered in her eyes. The other Zelari grunted and returned to their controls, murmuring in their language. "So," I said, once my stomach stopped trying to climb out of my throat, "want to maybe explain why I was suddenly scooped up like an Intergalactic prize winner?" Vera's smile faded and the light in the chamber dimmed slightly as if reacting to her mood. "There is a war," she said, "one that never ended. My people are scattered, the rebellion is dying, the Arkan throne is advancing. Earth was supposed to remain untouched, insignificant." "Okay, rude, but continue." "They found me," she continued. "Tracked the pendant, tracked you, Earth is no longer safe." I blinked. Wait, so I'm bait." "No," she said, "you are a variable." Wow, that's not comforting. That's like being called a maybe by someone who's holding a sword. "You saved my life," she said simply. "Now your presence may save many more." Or I'll trip on an airlock and doom everyone, 50-50. The ship shuddered slightly, and a view screen blossomed open in the wall, revealing a swirl of stars and what looked like a massive station built into the husk of an asteroid. It bristled with antennas and platforms, ships docking and departing in a slow dance of metal and flame, lights flickering across its surface like a living city. "This is Station Umber," Vera said, "Rebel Command. We'll dock, you'll be debriefed." "Wait, I'm being briefed now." "No," she said, "that was the prelude. The briefing involves charts." I groaned. Oh good, nothing gets me more excited than intergalactic PowerPoint. The ship slid into a bay with impossible grace, guided by beams of light that nudged it along like invisible hands. As we disembarked, I took in the scale of the station, alien creatures of all shapes and sizes moving with hurried purpose, some armored, some robed, a few that looked like walking coral reefs. A floating cube glided past us, beeped politely, and dispensed what I think was coffee. "Okay," I whispered, "this is officially cooler than Comic-Con." Vera led me through the chaos like a glacier parting a river. Everyone moved aside, whispers followed us, words in a dozen languages, and always the same glance toward me, the human in sneakers and a Star Wars hoodie, carrying a rubber duck and trying not to scream. "You sure I'm not being mistaken for someone else?" I hissed. "Like maybe you meant to abduct the guy from Interstellar." She didn't answer, she just stopped before a sealed door, palm pressed to the panel. "You asked me once," she said quietly, "if aliens had lungs." I frowned. "Yeah." She smiled faintly. "We have lungs and hearts and memories, some of us even have hope." The door slid open. Inside was a map of the galaxy. Parts of it were on fire, and just like that, I realized I wasn't dreaming. This was real, and the war had already begun. Space stations don't smell like anything you expect. No sterile hospital in a consent, no ozone tang of sci-fi movies. Station Umber smelled like burnt cinnamon and motor oil, like a space truck stop with a really aggressive spice rack. I tried not to inhale too deeply while Vera guided me through a maze of metal corridors that seemed designed by someone with a passion for disorientation and right angles. Every turn led to another hallway, and every hallway was full of beings who did not look pleased to see a human in a t-shirt that said NASA, not actually Space Army. Some of them were impossibly tall and fluid, like melting sculptures. Others were squat and bristly, like angry space porcupines. One creature passed us balancing a tank on its head filled with what I could only assume were sentient jellies doing synchronized swimming. I waved, they waved back, tentacles spelling out hello in a glowing, pulsating font. Technology and friendliness, a nice touch. We finally entered a chamber that looked like a conference room got absorbed by a museum exhibit on warfare through the galactic ages. One wall displayed an enormous holographic map of the galaxy, zones marked in flickering red, yellow, and green like a celestial heat map of doom. A low table in the center was surrounded by chairs that adjusted themselves to fit whoever approached. One of them tried to lick me. "Don't sit on that one," Vera murmured, "it's sentient." "Good to know," I said, stepping away from the amorous furniture. Waiting at the table were four beings who I assumed were the brains of the rebellion. One of them looked like a withered tree trunk with eyes, another wore robes made of light and had no visible face. The third was a squat frog-bear hybrid who radiated the energy of a grumpy librarian. The fourth, surprisingly, was human, or at least close to it. He had dark skin, silver in his hair, and eyes that shimmered unnaturally, like someone had replaced his pupils with tiny neutron stars. He didn't smile, but he did nod at me like I wasn't just a walking accident waiting to happen. "This is the human?" he asked. "Still soft," muttered the frog-bear. "Still here," I replied, also still very confused. Vera stepped forward. "This is Elias. He once saved my life on Earth. I owe him a blood debt." "Great," I whispered. "Can't wait to see how that gets collected." The tree trunk being made a creaking noise that might have been laughter or indigestion. "He has humor. That is rare among those with skin." I wasn't entirely sure how to respond to that, so I gave a weak thumbs up. Team Skin represent. The silver-haired man gestured to the holographic map. "The Arkan throne has overrun the mid-sector systems. They're pushing toward the core worlds. We've lost contact with 6 outposts in the last cycle, and 2 of our relay moons are broadcasting strange signals." He touched the control. The map zoomed in on a blue and white planet with 3 rings and a cratered moon orbiting too closely. Static filled the room, and then a voice came through, warped, inhuman, garbled like a cassette being chewed by a vengeful toaster. I caught one phrase: they remember the human. Everyone turned to me. I raised both hands. Look, I'm honored really, but if some galactic empire is setting their sights on Earth because I helped one injured alien in a forest, I feel like the karma here is wildly disproportionate. They believe you are important, Vera said, symbolically, strategically, and perhaps more. I squinted. Is this like a prophecy thing? Am I chosen because I don't have the wardrobe or emotional stability for that? You're not chosen, said the silver-haired man. You're remembered, and that's more dangerous. I didn't really have a response to that, so I sat in a non-sentient chair and tried to look strategically valuable. Vera continued the briefing, pointing to Arkan troop movements, supply line disruptions, and something ominously labeled void bloom zones. I didn't ask about those. Nothing with void or bloom in the name ever means anything good. Eventually, the group dispersed, mumbling about strategies and schedules. Vera stayed behind, her expression unreadable as always. You okay? I asked finally. I don't know, she said. You remind me of a time when I was weak. That is hard to carry. I nodded. Well, I remind myself of weak moments all the time. I just call it Wednesday. She looked at me and finally laughed, a real laugh, short, sharp, a little surprised. I grinned. Okay, I said. So what now? Do I learn to fight, hack alien satellites, lead an army of rogue chair creatures? No, she said. You come with me. There's someone you need to meet. Friend of yours? She hesitated, sort of. That's never good. We left the war room and made our way to a quieter part of the station, where the air felt heavier and lights were dimmed to a sleepy amber. At the end of a long corridor, a door opened with a whisper. Inside was a chamber made of crystal and living vines, pulsing faintly, and in the center, floating cross-legged and glowing faintly blue, was what I can only describe as an alien monk in zero gravity. Its eyes opened, 3 of them, and all locked onto me. You, it said, voice like wind over ice. The anomaly. Oh boy, I muttered, here we go again. Vera looked at me, just the hint of a smirk on her lips. Welcome, the monk said, to the nexus of the storm. And somewhere deep in the map of stars, a red sector blinked out like a light going dark. The final battle took place on a planet no one could pronounce, and even fewer had managed to survive visiting. It was officially listed in the Zari archives as Karathu 9, which I personally translated as lava ball with hostile personality disorder. The surface was a broken tapestry of molten rivers, jagged black stone, and air so thick with static it made your teeth itch. Ideal for dramatic standoffs, really. Less so for anyone with even mild asthma. I stood in the heart of a command ridge, dressed in the finest combat suit the rebellion could spare, a sleek thing that shimmered like oil and was definitely too tight in places no suit should be tight. A helmet hovered nearby, trying to latch onto my head of its own accord. I batted it away like a disobedient drone. Vera stood beside me, calm despite the incoming swarm of Arkan forces dropping from orbit like black raindrops. Her obsidian armor had been reforged, sleeker now, humming with pale blue power lines that pulsed like veins. Her long ears twitched once, and then she was utterly still. You're not scared, I said, more of a question than a statement. I am always scared, she replied, but I am also ready. I nodded solemnly, then broke the moment. I, on the other hand, am only scared with a healthy dash of existential nausea. The monk, whose name it turned out was Chithel of the Infinite Window, floated behind us, wrapped in the same glowing silence he always radiated. He had trained me in the odd, slow rhythm of Zelari memory weaving and ability to anchor memories into shared neural space. I could now technically implant a thought directly into another mind. Unfortunately, my best attempt had resulted in a rebel pilot having an intense craving for waffles mid-dogfight. Still, progress. Below, on the scorched plains of Carathon, the Arkan forces were deploying their siege engines, huge spidery machines with legs like tuning forks and weapons that shimmered with entropy fields. If that sounds bad, it's because it absolutely is. They could erase chunks of reality like hitting delete on a very specific patch of existence. That's not the kind of thing you want to test the hard way. Why are they so obsessed with me again? I asked, ducking as a scout drone zipped overhead. You gave me the pendant, Vera said. A gesture with no reward, a ripple that changed my path. They don't believe in compassion without purpose. They think you're part of a deeper equation. So I'm a statistical anomaly with emotional baggage. Great. Vera turned to me. You're a mirror. You made a warrior believe in mercy. I was about to make a joke, something about being the galaxy's worst motivational speaker when the sky split open like paper on fire. The Arkan flagship descended, blotting out the dying sun, and the war began. It was chaos. Beams of light shouted orders in 5 languages, a giant lizard thing barreling past me with a plasma cannon strapped to its back, yelling for the friar. I still don't know what that meant. I activated my neural link clumsily, anchoring thoughts into the command grid: warnings, updates, bad puns. I might not have had military training, but I had impeccable timing when it came to snark under pressure. Vera cut through the battlefield like a storm in a straight line. I saw her leap from one enemy to the next, blades drawn, her movements almost poetic, if poems involved dismemberment and midair spin kicks. At some point, I found myself face to face with the Arkan commander, an imposing mass of chrome and malice, its voice a grating buzz of 3 overlapping frequencies. You are the variable, it said, the corruption in the code. I held up the pendant, or maybe I'm just the glitch you forgot to patch. It lunged. I dodged barely, mostly by falling over a rock. I scrambled backward, heart pounding, desperately trying to link thoughts, any thoughts to Vera. Help, 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 help. And then she was there, intercepting the killing blow, her blade cracking through the Arkan's chest. The commander staggered. She turned to me. I told you, she said, you changed me. The Arkan's body collapsed, and with it, the control signal vanished. Their forces fell into chaos, leaderless. Within minutes, they began retreating or simply shutting down, a tide receding. The war, they said later, didn't end that day, but it broke. The rebellion had its chance, and across 100 worlds, the name Elias of Earth became something between a legend and a meme. We returned to Station Umber weeks later. Vera was quieter, the weight of command had settled differently on her shoulders now, less burden, more purpose. You could stay, she offered one day as we watched a gas giant spin lazily through the observation dome. I thought about it, the stars, the strangeness, the coffee cube that now knew my order by heart. But I missed Earth, its gravity, its awkwardness, its breakfast foods. I think I have to go back, I said. You've got an empire to rebuild. I've got a dentist appointment next month. She smiled. I will find you again, human. I touched the pendant. I never forgot you either. When I returned to Earth, 10 pounds lighter and several light years more bewildered, no one believed a word of it. I kept the pendant. Sometimes I think it hums faintly. Sometimes I wake up certain I heard Vera laughing in my dreams. Sometimes, late at night, I look at the stars and wonder if I was ever really meant to be anything but a ripple in someone else's tide. But then I remember her words, how one choice, one moment of kindness can tilt the axis of a galaxy, and I smile because maybe I was never just a glitch. Maybe I was the code that rewrote the ending. The end.